Police in Quebec have just solved one of the province's most notorious cold cases. But how exactly did they do it? After nearly 50 years, Sharron Prior's family was finally able to get a bit of closure thanks to advances in genealogy and genetics. Sharron was murdered in 1975 on her way to a pizza place in Montreal's Pointe St. Charles neighborhood. Her body was found 3 days later on the city's south shore. Police questioned scores of people and even identified some potential suspects, but no arrests were ever made. They did have some evidence, a description of the killer, the type of car he drove, and a t-shirt left behind at the crime scene. On that t-shirt there was DNA. DNA is the human genetic code. It's unique from person to person, and it's in all of our cells. But for decades, that DNA wasn't helpful because it didn't match anyone in police databases and scientific techniques were still evolving. But in 2022, scientists at Quebec's National Forensics Lab decided to try something new. Y chromosomes, unique to men, are part of the DNA that's passed down from father to son. Analysts were starting to understand that they could match that Y chromosome to something else that's often passed from father to son, family names. And that's what happened here. They checked the DNA and found a match. The killer probably had the last name Romain or Romain.
I checked those two names, Romain and Romain, in our various databases, and I found an individual by the name of Franklin Romain, which date of birth is April 2, 1946.
At the same time detectives were tracking down Franklin Romain, genetic genealogists in Quebec were tracing his family tree. They found Romain died in 1982, but he had 2 living brothers. Their DNA samples were a near match to the killer's, and the samples added more evidence to the detective's case. Romain's brothers had the same Y chromosome as the killer, and detectives learned that Franklin Romain lived in Montreal at the time of the killing. He drove a car compatible with tire tracks found at the scene, and he even matched the description of the killer. Armed with that new information, authorities were given the green light to excavate Romain's remains in West Virginia. The DNA was a perfect match to the DNA at the crime scene. It was the news Sharron's family had waited decades for.
You pushed new technology to its boundaries and brought us answers we have been waiting for 48 years to hear. Saying thank you hardly seems enough, but today that is all we have. So thank you.
This was the first time that Y chromosome analysis and genetic genealogy had been used this way in Quebec to solve a murder case that went cold. The tools used to crack Sharron's case will be used again to solve other cold cases, and hopefully to give other families a bit of closure.